What was the scale of warfare like during the War in Heaven? War accelerates the development of weapons, true in our world and true during the War in Heaven. It was a war between godlike beings, but for those that served, for the Necrons and the Eldar, what weapons did they develop during this time? The remnants of which still plague the battlefields of 40k. And how would those weapons have been used? The first weapon is going to be the Achillea Maw. In this excerpt, the Eldar want their weapon back. The Imperials are settled on the planet where it's located, where the Eldar had once played. The Achillea Maw. Those weapons which allowed us once to control the stars and carve an empire in blood and glory. A chain reaction began to build as the dark matter at the centre of each weapon was released and began to accumulate. We watched a cloud of death spreading across the face of our ancient home. Fields were stripped bare, rocks crumbled to dust. The seas boiled into the air, creating massive electrical storms across the skies. All living things were scattered to the howling winds. A final eruption of power shattered the world's skin, causing great volcanoes to spring into life, belching rock and dust into the already polluted atmosphere. Cracks and rents ripped across her once beautiful continents. Where the forest of Letha once spread as far as the eye could see, there was now only rivers and lakes of lava and fire. We are talking exterminatus level weapons here, wrecking an entire world. But that's still small for the scale of the War in Heaven. So how could it have been used, this weapon? You wreck a world, you end the resources the Necrons might need there. You might remove a secure world that had been harassing your forces in that area of the galaxy. So next, how about another weapon? Rearranges planets. The one that's been removed is infested with Tyranids and is viewed by a Dark Eldar Coven as an opportunity to obtain many test subjects. Lithidia, a planet. To get it into the webway would require a planetary translocation. In the aftermath of Supreme Overlord's vengeance upon the Archon, Kelithresh, Vect had left a howling hole in the universe. Rakath knew the webway routes to Vect's tame singularity. The true miracle would be to ensure Lithidia was conveyed to Comora's orbit without tearing apart the space-time continuum. Rakath raised a glowing ruby to his thin white lips and spoke a single forbidden word. Throughout the labyrinth dimensions surrounding Comora, ancient portals were forced open, just as others were sealed closed. Just for a moment, a direct channel was opened between Vect's howling captive vortex and the energy net that surrounded Lithidia. Slowly, impossibly, the planet began to distort, shimmer, and move. The planet quaked, screamed, and in a single apocalyptic instant, vanished altogether. By the time the homunculi had returned to their lairs, a new celestial body orbited the multi-dimensional sprawl of Comora. So they can move planets. Now imagine moving a planet with crucial resources from the enemy side over to your side, or moving a planet that is the last resistance in a certain sector, and you move it out of harm's way so you can destroy and seize that area, allowing you to redraw the lines of the battle. Of course you need a singularity, but that's not beyond these racers for a single strategic move. Maybe we move a star the Tan wanted to devour, weakening them. And if you can't move the planet, perhaps you could just remove the enemy from it. This is done by a world spirit made up from the souls of dead Exodite Eldari, and perhaps the minds of many Eldar could do the same. A great crack suddenly split the ground from east to west, leaping from horizon to horizon like a jagged black lightning bolt. Fire and stone shot skywards from the crack, followed by an expanding bubble of volcanic ash that came rolling out to engulf both land and sky. A sudden dozen glows kindled on the night side of the planet, without much time passing, merely minutes, while on the day side, huge plumes of volcanic ash could be seen climbing into the stratosphere. Fantastic cloud formations coiled around the eruptions, forming concentric rings where storm force winds were kindling. If this can be focused, you could remove your enemy forces, stopping invading a world you hold, or, if you can do this to a Necron world, remove your opponents so you can take key resources that they once held, without any resistance. Now onto something a little more straightforward, one of my favourites. This beauty is dubbed the Gravidic Trebuchet. Takesh describes that to his king, and then carries on with another flourish. A great defensive engine, designed to accelerate asteroids at superluminal speed. It could annihilate the most fearsome fortified targets from light years away. Place this or several in the right area, filled with meteors for ammunition, and these trebuchets will be able to eliminate enemy planets or ships for light years around. And at that speed, it would be very difficult to track or avoid that they were coming for you. Little pre-warning. And what about taking away the enemy's fuel to pin them down in one place, or to stop them reaching an important planet? The Necron fleet tore the heart out of a star. It was an old star, leaning heavily on its walking stick with a slow gait, fat and red, a lumbering giant that stood as a relic of a time before the clouds of the veiled region had gathered. The star darkened and then collapsed, throwing off outer layers in ripples of radiation millions of miles across. The star's power fueled the fleet's alien technologies. So knowing this, the Eldar could remove stars that might be used by the Necrons in crucial areas so they can't cross the fronts of the war. Knowing how your enemy operates is shown here to be a way to beat them. They use the stars, you take that star away. In the Zan system, a concerted Imperial push upon a void-born Necron pylon triggered a massive naval engagement. A bound dwarf star was propelled by the Necrons into the Imperial naval formations and wrought catastrophic damage and killed billions in minutes. But a ship ramming shattered one of these stellar shackles containing the star's power. Think of that scale for a moment, using a bound dwarf star as a mobile weapons platform. And to finish, the Star Pulse Generator. It was a weapon of dire strength, a dimensional appendix containing an artificial stellar body with a mass far too great to sustain its own combustion, but soothed by the unnaturally forgiving physical laws of the pocket reality containing it. Now, whether the Necrons had just stumbled across this pocket reality, or it was one that had been specifically crafted to contain this and perhaps other things, I'm not sure. I would go with the Necrons deciding how this dimension operated. Anyway, when it was brought into baseline reality, the pseudo-star would explode instantly in a controlled small-scale nova. Usually, it would be used to clear swarms of smaller craft from around a beleaguered capital ship, directed by phase shields, so as not to damage the vessel that fired it. But, as well as sheer energy, it also threw out an enormous wave of physical matter. And if that happened close enough to a solid surface, for example a planet, the reflected wave would provide an astonishing secondary effect. Antikef burned, and as the shockwave bounced back from its core, ravaging the pulverized remains of the surface for a second time, it hit the Acrop's graviton sails, speeding the ship forward as if it were pushed by enormous hands. So that was a smart deploy, like having a very large frag grenade where the explosion carries out further fragmented parts. You could lay out a system or more with this, and the bonus, allowing it to also move your ship. So, fighting with the resources of the galaxy, be they meteors, the power of stars, or storing star power within other tailored dimensions, and unleashing it, the mastery of the galaxy's resources, that was the scale of the war in heaven. But still those basic tenets of warfare hold and remain, the movement of resources, holding actions. So, I can teach you a thing or two about the Necrons. If you want to know more, click here and maybe give the video a like and a comment, but only if you want to.